I remember being a high school teacher, and we would do this collaborative learning experiences, and so you would assign different kids to different groups. And, if they got somebody they didn't want to work with, when you got assigned the kid who you didn't want to work with because they weren't going to do any of the work and you knew you were going to do all the work, versus getting somebody you knew like, oh my goodness, this person's like the best person to work with because they are super smart and super engaging and collaborative and able to really pull their weight on the team. Well, that is the way I feel about our team at CFT Institute. I am here today with Kyle and Sherri. And welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Yep. My name is Monica Maurer, and I am the director of CFT Institute, as well as a licensed professional counselor and supervisor. And Kyle and Sherri are both licensed therapists as well, and we together form the curriculum writing team for the CFT Institute. So it's good to have you all here today on this episode where we're all three together first time. So that's pretty cool, right? And there'll be many more of these to come. But we're excited to talk about that today. So first of all, I'd like to talk about how we all met. It's kind of unconventional, and I know I talked in a past episode with Kyle individually and Sherri individually, and we talked about how we met each other. But it's kind of a cool story how we all three met, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to you and I meeting in Israel, right? We were on a trip, and then you take it from there.
Okay.
What happened after that? You ended up going back
Right.
home and
So when we met, you're a therapist, I another woman that I connected with was a therapist, and it was like this instant bond and connection.
Yeah.
And I had always thought about doing that, but I thought I would have to go and do school all over again. And so you and our other friend that I connected with, she was actually the president of a college and a therapist, and then you were a therapist, and she was like, you don't have to go all the way back to the beginning of school. And I was like, I don't. I could do this. So
Right.
it actually, it changed the whole direction of my life.
It totally did,
Yeah.
right? And so, Sherri, you went back home to Maryland where you were living, and you ended up going to, getting in at, finishing some undergrad classes and then starting grad school.
Right. Yep.
And then that's where you met.
I met Kyle.
Right?
And, I wasn't around Kyle all the time. We were in some classes together, and had conversations here and there on campus. And I was like, he's a really cool guy. And then found out that he was living in North Carolina, and was like, you should connect with my friend Monica.
Yeah, so then you reached out, right?
Yes,
Like,
I
what do
did.
you remember about that, Kyle?
Yeah, so at that point, I was just trying to make connections, and I was like, I should get a jump start on this whole networking thing. It normally helps. So I remember that Sherri had told us that story, and I was like, I'm going to go ahead and just see what it's like to be a professional therapist. And you invited me to come sit in on one of your monthly meetings, and I just remember walking into the room and kind of being in awe, of the way that everybody invited me to be a part of the team, even though I was still a student. So it was really cool, and I remember going back to school and not thinking much more of it than it was an incredible experience. And then 9 months later, you reached out and said you were building a team that would eventually end up becoming this. But it was so neat that you reached back out to say that I had been on your mind for starting the team, that you thought that we'd be a good fit.
Yeah.
And here we are a few years later.
That is so cool. It's
yeah.
so interesting because, who knew then that Sherri would move from Maryland, right? So after Kyle, you started on our small group practice team, and we were working together for a while. I remember talking to Sherri and saying, hey, Sherri, what do you think about moving to North Carolina and being a part of our team here? Kyle's here, trying to use that as a little bait. And sure enough, after enough asks, Sherri ended up coming down, and now we're all three working together. And so it feels very like a peaceful, providential type of experience that we're all three working together here and now formulating this concept of the CFT Institute, right? And so we have this passion to be therapists, right? Because there's something in our own personal lives that we are bringing to the table and wanting to offer to clients, right? And then there's something about the institute concept of like then offering all of that to other therapists to say, hey, this might be helpful as well. So why don't you each talk a little bit about your journey as a therapist, like what brought you to the to the realization that you wanted to be a therapist, and how that's going for you, and what this job is like for you, et cetera, et cetera. So Kyle, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I would love to. This journey's been a really cool one for me, and I'm just thankful that I get a chance to do what I do with clients, because it feels like the outworking of what we would say as a calling. It feels like it's the best part of me that I get to give in a way that I couldn't otherwise. But counseling, I think, was a part of my own healing journey long before I became a counselor. From my own trauma in my early 20s, which was just an outworking of struggles when I was younger, to getting therapy from a gentleman who I now consider, a dear friend, who gave me the opportunity to mature in ways that I wouldn't have otherwise matured. So then, fast forward, I got the chance to go back to grad school and meet you guys and be on the other side of the room. So now I get to help other people do that. And I was thinking about the work that we're doing here at the Institute, where all of us now have experience working with clients one-on-one or in families, couples, groups, to now we really want to take that out to an even broader perspective and train therapists on these principles that have changed our lives as therapists, right? And Monica, you were joking earlier about, being in school when we were young and being partnered up with people who had a really hard time doing any of the work. And guys, I realize very much so that, when we're young, schools aren't always set up for all of us. Like, the system is not great for everybody. Sometimes we have to perform, like we just have to fit this mold that doesn't work really well for us, So what we're going to be doing at the Institute, I think, is we're going to be taking these models, these principles, these things that we've learned, where relationships don't feel like a performance anymore. Like, they're really authentic, because we're going to be helping people, therapists, learn how to treat their clients in a way where authentic relationships, the end result.
So good.
And I think that's really powerful, right? We don't have to perform in those relationships anymore. Just like we didn't have to perform when we were in school, but that's all we knew how to do.
Right.
So
we're learning a new way.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's awesome.
Thanks.
Oh, so good, Kyle. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
Sherri, what are you thinking about all that? How are you feeling about being a therapist? And like, what is this like? What is this, this life like for you? And what is it like to be here on this team, us working together?
Yeah. So it definitely feels like a very fulfilling calling. Like Kyle mentioned, calling. And, that goes back years of feeling called to help people heal. And in my own journey, not really knowing how to do that well, the stuff that we're doing together as a team, and the stuff that we're wanting to get into other people's hands, right? It has really revolutionized how I do my work, and because it's not just work, it's relationship. It's relational skills that are missing in so many people. And we're getting it together, and we're seeing how it's impacting us professionally. We're seeing people through a different lens. Through a lens of compassion and being tender to people's weaknesses, and that's not the normal culture, right? And I've mentioned before in another video, just we're so used to competing with each other, and I think we all live in such a way in our culture in so many different circles that we can never really fully be ourselves and show up authentically, because there's so much competition.
So true.
Yeah.
And I just to piggyback on that, Sherri, I think when we're in that kind of environment, it's really hard to focus on being good at what you do.
Right.
Because you're so focused on maybe I'm going to do it wrong, and it kind of hijacks your system, you know, your nervous system, you're going into anxiety or intense emotion of some kind, and then you can't really focus on the client and doing a good job with that, right? And then that leads to shame. And, you know, I think it may even, if you're listening to this episode and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I wish I was better at my job, right? You guys sound like you really enjoy it and that you're really feeling fulfilled, but I feel frustrated and I feel like I'm not good enough, and I feel like, you know, I maybe shouldn't even be doing this some days, you know? And we all feel like that some days, right? It's really hard, but what we've noticed is being a part of a community where we are synchronizing together. It's not like it's been easy, right? Like we have hard conversations and we work through difficulties, but we're doing that work. Like we're actually doing the work, and we're not just coming up with the stuff out of thin air. It's not like we thought of it, right? Like there's some principles that we're following that have been incredible. Right? Have been so life-giving, and we are so excited to kind of pull these together and present them to therapists with the Institute. So both Kyle and Sherri are incredible presenters and incredible authors, and so we will be kind of pulling some information together in these next episodes, and soon we'll be having some curriculum to offer to therapists that we hope to have even be a part of continuing education for therapists, so that you can learn and grow. And we're not saying that we've arrived or that we're the best or that we've figured this out and now we're going to give you the keys. It's more like we're a work in progress. We'd like to pull some other people along with us. If you'd like to come journey with us, right, into this place of really having fulfillment with one another, that we can then offer to our clients and our families and our communities at large. And so, hey, we're in this. This has been great, guys. Thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
For sure.
definitely. We'll look forward to a future episode. Stay tuned.